And welcome back to Spiritual Strength. Today we have a very special guest, Barb Ernster, the National Coordinator and Communications Manager of the World Apostolate of Fatima, the Blue Army. Barb, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Gene. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the beginning of the World Apostolate of Fatima, the genesis of the Blue Army. How did it start? Why? What's the purpose? What's the mission? What are we aimed at?
Well, it started actually after World War II when it began to be realized that the message of Fatima was not getting out much beyond Portugal, and the prophecies of Our Lady were coming true. John Haffert had gone to Fatima to do some research, and he was invited by the Bishop of Fatima to meet with Sister Lucia to find out exactly what it was that Our Lady wanted of us. And so he met with her, but at the same time in Plainfield, New Jersey, Monsignor Harold Colgan was starting to form this Blue Army of Our Lady to counter the Red Army of communism. And of course, communism at that time was rising, the Cold War, the height of atheist communism, and the Russia's errors were spreading. They were gobbling up many countries. And so people were very much aware of the dangers of communism. And so together the two began to form this apostolate. And when John Haffert met with Lucia in 1946, he sat down with her and he said, now what is it exactly that Our Lady wants? She wants us to pray the rosary. And Lucia said she wants us to become holy. And so the most essential message of Fatima, she said, was to offer up every day your sufferings and to make an offering to the Lord, uniting all of your trials and your sufferings to our Lord so that they could become your prayer all day. And then we're abandoning ourselves to God's will every day. We're accepting and bearing patiently with our sorrows, which is what Our Lady and St. Joseph and Jesus would have had to do, the apostles, all the way down through the ages. This is how the great saints became holy, by accepting every day their daily duty. And she said the rosary, yes, we are to pray the rosary every day, especially to obtain peace in the world. And at this time, this is a call to everybody to pray the rosary every day for peace. It has been entrusted to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Lucia said the rosary was the spiritual aid that would help us fulfill that first essential request. And then she said the brown scapular, to wear the brown scapular as a sign of your consecration to Mary, that too was a spiritual aid. And then she talked about the first Saturday devotion, which of course was presented to Lucia in 1925. And that was to help make the consecration of Russia more perfect, and so that Russia's conversion would be more perfect, but it's also calling us to make reparation for the sins and blasphemies committed against the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And so when we go to confession, we're cleaning ourselves out. We're making ourselves ready so God can use us. So Mary's asking us to do monthly confession. We're praying a 5-decade rosary. We're receiving Holy Communion, and all of this in reparation for the sins against her Immaculate Heart. And then we're spending 15 minutes in meditation with her. And that's what I always say. I like to put Mary next to, ask her to sit next to me, guide my meditation, help me to learn from your heart. And she always does. And then that's when I ask her for the graces that I need. Now, Lucia said the first Saturday devotion was our monthly renewal of that daily yes. So these are the 4 things. They parallel perfectly with what St. Louis de Montfort had asked during his teachings 200 years earlier. He asked for very similar things. And so I always say the Fatima message is like a hand in the glove of St. Louis de Montfort's teachings.
Right. And unfortunately, a lot of times people now, like we were saying before about the brown scapular, I find when I'm speaking to people, that tends to be the one where there's the most confusion, and people, they don't see the scapular as the sign of the consecration. So how they go together.
Right.
And also Father Rafferty said that the rosary and the scapular are inseparable.
Right.
So speak a little bit about that.
Well, again, Lucia called them spiritual aids to help us. And St. Louis de Montfort asked people to wear some sign of consecration to Mary, and he called for little gold chains. Now, I don't know at what point the scapular became more broadly used among lay people. It was always a sign of consecration for the Carmelites. The Carmelites have always been very devoted to the Blessed Mother. And so sometime around the 1300s, lay people also wanted to wear this sign of consecration. And so the brown scapular started to develop the lay orders of the Carmelites and the confraternity of the Order of the Brown Scapular. So these things started to develop over time. And Lucia, she always felt that the Brown Scapular was part of that message, because during the October 13th miracle of the sun, when the three children were not seeing the miracle, they were seeing, the vision of the Holy Family. They saw Saint Joseph holding the child Jesus and blessing the world. Then they saw, Lucia herself saw Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and she was holding out a brown scapular. And so in her own discernment, she always discerned that that was part of the message. And it was confirmed to her when Pope Pius XII himself said the brown scapular is a sign of consecration to the Immaculate Heart. And so she was the one who taught that this is part of the message of Fatima.
Right. And the resistance that I often see, and I'm sure you've seen it before, where people say, but Our Lady didn't say it, or Sister Lucia didn't say it. Maybe or Our Lady didn't say it, but Sister Lucia actually did say this was part of the message of Fatima in the Blue Army Pledge. Speak about that a little bit.
Well, Our Lady didn't say a lot of things, but it was given to Lucia to carry this mission forward to the world. This is what she was asked to do. Our Lord wants to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. And this is the devotion that she presented to Lucia. Lucia had many other apparitions of Our Lady throughout her time. She was on earth for 88 years. She had a lot of time before the Eucharist. She was the one asked to bring this message to the world. She communicated frequently with her spiritual directors in letters. She communicated with her bishop. So at some point, her letters will be published, and people will be able to see where she was communicating with the church, and she was guiding the message. She kept that message so close to her heart. She was so careful with it. She would not have done anything that would not have been something that she herself had been confirmed to her in her prayer before the Eucharist, or from Our Lady herself. And I know people have a hard time with the brown scapular because it's difficult to wear. It gets all over the place, and I've struggled with it too. And they want to wear the miraculous medal. It's easier to put a medal on. It just sits there. But the other thing, many of us got enrolled in the brown scapular when we were receiving First Communion. Did we really understand what it was when we were enrolled? We didn't. So now as adults, we're taking on the devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. It has to come from our hearts. Do we want to be consecrated to Mary? Do we want to show a sign of our consecration to her? Do we want to, study up on the Carmelites and the spirituality of the Carmelites? Because it is a pathway to holiness. Some of the great doctors of the church, Saint Therese of Lisieux, Saint Teresa of Avila, they're the ones who laid out this great pathway of holiness through the Carmelite order. Lucia herself was a Carmelite. So it's something that you almost have to grow into and adopt and say, I'm going to take this to heart and believe that Mary, if I live my life in holiness, abandoned to God's will, devoted to Mary, free of sin, striving for perfection, Mary is going to be with me at the time of my death. She's going to fulfill that promise that she gave to the Carmelites. So we have to take all of these things into our hearts and discern, how far do I want to go with Mary? None of us want to be half consecrated to the Immaculate Heart. None of us want to achieve being a half of a saint. We want to go all the way. And so this is the pathway, and it was given to Lucia to spread.
Absolutely. And it also seems like one of the messages of Fatima, that Our Lady relayed to the children, was that certain fashions would be introduced into the world, and immodesty of clothing, right, and more people go to hell because of sins of the flesh. Well, when you have that scapular on, that's a constant reminder and a constant sign against the vanity, because sometimes, people can see it, and it's a reminder, and you have to, it's on you. So right, there's that visible reminder, that tangible reminder. And a lot of people don't want that because they want to expose their body, and and they have that dissonance where they don't want to do that. So yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Well, Mary wants to cover us in her mantle. She wants to protect us. And when we are taking on imitating her and being devoted to her, we want to act like her. We want our demeanor to be like her. We don't want to be dressed immodestly. We don't want to be, doing anything that would cause another person to sin, or even ourselves to be objectified in that way. And so we're protecting ourselves. We're trying to be like Mary. We can't be devoted to Jesus if we can't stand before him like his mother would have. And so it is a constant reminder to be chaste, not only in your dress, but in your actions, in your words, in how you're going to, Mary wants to help us shine the light of Christ. And so when we're putting on her mantle, we're trying our best to imitate her, because it's through her Immaculate Heart, as she told Lucia, that we will find the pathway to God. My Immaculate Heart will be your refuge in the way that will lead you to God. She's not going to lead us anywhere else. And so when we take that on, we take on this devotion to her, whether it's through your 33-day consecration. And I'm sure St. Louis de Montfort would have talked about this too. He talked about it in depth about, becoming knowledgeable about yourself, becoming knowledgeable about the Blessed Mother, and becoming knowledgeable about Jesus. He has these 11-day teachings before you even start to make a consecration. And then you want to live the consecration. So the Fatima message is how you would live that every day.
Right. And that also, my mind also thinks back to what you were saying before about that just because Our Lady didn't say to wear the scapular, certainly she came as Our Lady of Mount Carmel.
Right.
She handed the brown scapular, and you have the testimony of Lucia saying this indeed is what Our Lady asked for. So, and we all say that communication is 90% nonverbal.
Right.
And a lot of people will say, you look at Our Lady of Knock, she appeared, she didn't say a word, but what the surroundings, the context, and what was displayed, that spoke volumes. Why do then people then just throw that out? The 90% of communication is nonverbal, and exactly how we interpret Our Lady of Knock when she didn't say anything there. And what's the disconnect there? Why people don't bring that to Our Lady of Fatima?
Well, I don't think they want to listen to Lucia. The mission was given to Lucia. Certainly, she didn't know everything at age 10. She had to grow in knowledge of this. She had to learn how to read and write, and she wrote volumes, 60,000 letters that I hope someday will be published. I mean, there were great St. John the 23rd, Paul the 6th. She communicated with some of the highest in the church. She communicated with dignitaries from all over the world. We don't know all the people that wrote to her, but she was guiding people all along in this message. She was the one given the message. Does St. Faustina write down everything that Jesus might have told her in her diary? The development of the Divine Mercy message is the same thing. We had to come to understand, what is Jesus saying to us? Lucia herself had to grow into adulthood. She had to grow in holiness. If you look at some of her earlier writings, there's this great letter she wrote where she did an examination of herself, and you see her character defects. And when I wrote an article about it, I mean, the character defects are defects that any one of us would have. And so she was learning to be holy. She was abandoning herself every day to God, and God and Our Lady entrusted this to her to tell the world. And I also say, St. Joseph, did he say one word throughout the Bible? How many people are consecrating themselves to him, and how much is written on him now? He appeared at Fatima as well. And there's a question as to why was he appearing at that time? He never said anything. He blessed the world. He's with the child Jesus. Well, look what happened so soon after the Fatima messages. In December 1917, the first thing Bolshevik atheist communist Russia does is they instituted a law, the first one of its kind in all of the world, that you could get a divorce for any reason, no fault divorce. So you could, if you just didn't like your wife, you could just divorce her. And so so that started the breakdown of the family. It started right then in 1917. It continued with the abortion, the birth control, the breakdown of, this sacredness of marriage started from Russia right away in 1917. And of course, within how many decades later, 1969, we had the same no-fault divorce here. 1970, it was a nationwide law. By then, there were 42 Planned Parenthood clinics that were already established across the nation, or they were in 42 states. So you see the breakdown of the family was starting. So here's the Holy Family and Joseph with Jesus blessing the world. He didn't say a word, but Lucia always interpreted that he himself would have been one of the greatest devotees of the devotion to the Immaculate Heart. He was coming to help his spouse, and his time is going to unfold now in these times.
Exactly. I mean, who wouldn't? Clearly, his presence meant something.
Right.
And there was no one who was more consecrated to Our Lady. No person than Christ, who's a divine person, but there's no human person,
Right.
Human being, right? Christ is a divine being. He is a human nature, but he's not a human being. He's a divine being. But no human person was more consecrated to Our Lady than Saint Joseph. So he was absolutely telling us something there.
Right. I
And
think a lot of the problem is too, Jean, is that people just don't want to wear the brown scapular. They just don't want to wear it. And again, you have to bring this into your heart. You can put the brown scapular on and go about your life and be sinful. Just like in the Protestant world, many people one time in their life they go and accept Jesus Christ as their Savior, and they don't do anything else. I mean, we're called to be perfect like our Heavenly Father. Who's more perfect than Mary, and who more can we learn from than her? And so I always say, take the message into your heart and pray about it. Let Our Lady guide you. And then eventually you might say, yes, this is my yes to Mary every day. I'm going to put that brown scapular on, and I'm going to start to imitate her. It has to be done from our heart. So
absolutely. I mean, humans are composite beings. We're body and soul. So
Mhm.
soul is really putting all of our heart and our mind into it, but we also have that tangible, that the element of being the creature, where we have the devotions that we're doing that are to reflect the
Right.
internal dispositions. So
Mhm.
it's both, it's body and soul.
Well, I
That's
always tell my kids, you need to be healthy in body, mind, and soul. So you got to eat right. You got to exercise. Exercise helps your body and your mind. You got to take care of your mind by, reading good stuff, not filling it with bad stuff. And then your soul, spiritually, using the muscles for your spiritual strength as well. So body, mind, and soul. And all of this goes together.
Yes. And St. Paul said it, may you be sanctified whole and entire in your spirit, soul, and body. Absolutely. Now, a thought that I had also is that the Blue Army Pledge seemed to have been gaining a lot of traction before, I don't know, whatever year it was, but before, like halfway through the century, the
Oh,
20th
yeah.
century, there was a lot of people who took the Blue Army Pledge. And it seemed like now, relatively speaking, okay, there's a greater population, but percentage wise, probably way fewer people. Now, why is that happening? What
Right.
can we all do to spike that number? We have more people taking the pledge.
Mhm. Well, at first I want to say when John Haffert was done talking to Lucia, he brought the pledge to the Bishop of Fatima, and he said, "You may promulgate this as if it was coming from me." So he goes back to New Jersey. He starts talking at Monsignor Colgan's parish. The two of them start to come together, and it hit John Haffert. This is an apostolate that we are supposed to spread the blue army of Our Lady against the red army of communism. And again, it was much more accepted back then because people understood the danger of communism. And even the term pledge, they were pledging to do what Our Lady said. In this day and age, what does pledge mean? It means I want your money. Pledge $25 a month to me. So even the term pledge is a little archaic. So we're trying to say, join Our Lady's Blue Army, be part of Our Lady's children on earth, and to take up the message that she requested of us at Fatima. You look at Akita, Japan, it follows very closely behind Fatima, the same messages that Mary was asking for. So, whether you do a 33-day consecration through the St. Louis de Montfort program or another one, and you take on the devotion to the Immaculate Heart, and you start to live it every day. And to sign the Blue Army Pledge is to enroll in this apostolate and to enroll in Mary's cohort on earth, to be part of her cohort. We are the children that she is using at this time, which is why I always tell people that first Saturday devotion is important, because God doesn't use people who are mired in sin. So to even, people don't want to accept the fact that once a month I should go to confession. But St. Louis de Montfort talked greatly about, in these latter days, God would raise up a people that would be especially devoted to Mary and to her Immaculate Heart. And together with her, they will crush the head of the serpent. So Mary is calling to us, her children on earth, the ones that have ears open to Christ's words, the ones that are following her son. And she's inviting us to participate in helping for the salvation of souls, for peace in the world. She's inviting us to participate in her own role. It's a great gift to be called by Our Lady and to do this. But again, you have to do it in your heart, and you can go to bluearmy.com and join the apostolate. You can sign that pledge. You can write to us to get the form mailed in the mail. But again, it's to take seriously to do what Our Lady had asked us to do. It's a spiritual apostolate. John Hafford always called it the Blue Army of Our Lady, an army on its knees with open to doing prayer and penance with their hearts open to the heart of Our Lady. It's an army on its knees. That's what it is.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And the understanding was always that the pledge, these four things, right? Consecrate our, wear the brown scapular as a sign of our consecration, rosary daily, offer up our sufferings and daily duties, and the first Saturday devotion. Those four things, it's necessary for the acceleration of the triumph of the Immaculate
Right.
Heart of Mary, so that when enough people, when a certain critical number is reached of people doing that Blue Army pledge, what Our Lady requested, then we'll finally see the triumph of Mary. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, I think it was Padre Pio who said, when there is a Blue Army member for every communist, we will conquer it. And he's the spiritual father of the World Apostolate of Fatima Blue Army. Actually, I want to go back and say that the first Saturday devotion was not in the original pledge. It was the offering up of your daily duty, praying the rosary, and wearing the brown scapular. It was added later as Lucia began to promote it more, and then the World Apostolate of Fatima put it into the pledge. So we always tell people, strive to do the first Saturday devotion. Once you've done 5 consecutively, then just continue to make those first Saturdays holy and do what you can. But yes, it was St. Padre Pio who said, when there is a Blue Army member for every communist, we will conquer. And he himself said Monsignor Colgan went to him and asked if he would be the spiritual father of all Blue Army members. And he said, he will, that famous quote, "I will stand at the gates of heaven until all my children come in." It's a beautiful addition to have St. Padre Pio praying for you in heaven. And so, talking about the pledge, we want people to sign it, and you're signing it in your heart. You're spiritually adopting this way of living, this devotion to the Immaculate Heart. And so, it's a spiritual pledge is what it is. And we don't follow up with you and say, hey, did you get your rosary in every day? Did you? It's more like you're taking it on as you would take on a consecration.
Right. It's not the same as a vow, but it's something you're taking on as a personal devotion. But it's two things. It is, yes, there's a private side and there's a social side. As a private side, it's a personal devotion that will as an aid to get you to heaven. But also there's a social side of this devotion, that this is part of the prophecies of Our Lady of Fatima, where this is a key that opens a door, or that to the triumph of Mary, right? Because sometimes people will get it confused. Well, it's just a private thing. Well, yes, it is, but there's also a social component to this. You're helping save the world by doing this.
We're being asked to do prayer and penance and for the conversion of sinners. We aren't going to have peace without conversion. And so we're being invited to be part of this triumph by our participation with her. It's not just that the church had to do its part. We also were asked to do our part. And the first thing she came to ask for after the Fatima apparitions was a devotion to the 5 first Saturday devotion. How many people have just dismissed that? It's we call it the most forgotten devotion of the Fatima messages. And so that was our part, our lay people. And you don't have to have a church holding a first Saturday devotion to get those things accomplished. And so yes, the social part of it is we are participating in praying for the conversion of sinners and salvation of souls. And I love the message that Our Lady gave to the 3 children in August. Pray for those who have nobody to pray for them, because many people go to hell because there's no one to pray for them. How many people out there do we know are walking around blindly in the world? Some of them maybe have not learned much at all about their faith or God. And that we are to pray for these people who have no one to pray for them. And to me, that always gives me some comfort that I'm remembering those who are really, really lost, and they don't have a family member. They don't have their faithful grandma praying for them. That's where we are participating with Mary.
Right. That's the wonderful thing about the mystical body of Christ, our Catholic faith.
Right.
Absolutely. What are some good resources, books, and also everything that the World Apostolate does? How can they follow you and get on the Blue Army, take the pledge, as well as everything that you have to offer?
Well, we invite everybody to go to bluearmy.com and go to our join page. You can bluearmy.com/join and become a member. Then you will be getting our podcasts, our articles. We try to encourage people to hope. We try to help teach them more of the Fatima message. We have videos. We have a series of videos with Father Hugh Gillespie with the Company of Mary, who did a series on the devotion to the Immaculate Heart for us. And those are available at watch.bluearmy.com. You can also just go to our programs page. They're free. We have a study guide there if you want to delve deeper into the devotion to the Immaculate Heart, understand it in light of St. Louis de Montfort's teachings. We ask people to form prayer cells in their parishes, because that's the praying foundation of our apostolate, is to have these prayer cells. And we have programs for First Saturday devotion. Mainly, we'd like people to just sign up and get our emails, because then you will get our podcasts and our articles and learn more.
Excellent. What else? Was there anything else that we missed? I'm sure there's a lot. It's a huge topic, but what else? Anything else that you wanted to say, or anything else we really wanted to maybe stress even more?
Well, I just like to stress that, in this time, Jesus said himself, will there be any faith left when I return to earth? And that, as a little girl, younger person, I always thought, oh Lord, don't let me want to be one of those that's not faithful at the end. And even if there's just a remnant left, what a great gift if we're being called to be part of that remnant, to be the hands and feet of Jesus and Mary during this time when we're really facing a lot of crises everywhere, and to stay strong. St. Louis de Montfort had said that this group of people that would be specially devoted to Mary, they would be not the elites. They would be not, they'd be under the radar. They would not be esteemed in the world. Well, what do we see in the news? It's Hollywood, it's Washington, it's world leaders, it's all the tech giants. It's not us little people. And so we are the ones underneath all the fires that are going on the surface, and we're helping to create that river of grace and mercy that Jesus and Mary are using. And when we're totally consecrated to Mary, we're not concerned about where she's taking that grace and where she's applying it. We're just giving of ourselves. Total gift to God through her. That's what Jacinta, Francisco, and Lucia became, total gift to God. And so that's what I ask people to say. If you're being called, think of it as a great gift from God. Take it seriously, that your little prayers, you might be homebound, you're praying your rosary every day. Mary is using that. It is not to be diminished. Even if you don't feel like you're accomplishing anything, God is using all of us in great ways. So just keep going and don't lose hope.
Absolutely. Thank you, Barb. That's great. And we strongly encourage that everyone follow everything you're doing, the World Apostolate of Fatima, Blue Army. Make sure you take the Blue Army pledge. It's pressing. It's more urgent now than ever before. Things will continue to get worse until enough people are doing what Our Lady asked for, and she gave us a simple formula. And thank you very much for sharing that with us, Barb. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. God bless you and your family. Take care.
Thank you.